to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday, and I have a big treat for you. Brad Leavitt of AFT Construction is back with me today. Hi, Brad. How are you?
I'm great, LuAnn. Thanks for having me again.
So, Brad, we said it when we met each other last time that I had to have you back again and again and again, that we were going to do what your builder wants you to know. So that's what we're here to do today. And I'm very excited because your first show that you were on my podcast, number 542, was a huge hit. I got so many responses on Instagram, on Facebook, by email about how impressed the designers were with you. And of course, I knew that. That's why I invited you back before they even heard your show.
Thank you.
Yes. So the thing is that in case this is the first time you're hearing about Brad, I do encourage you to go back after this episode and listen to 542, where we go a little bit more into Brad's background and his career as a builder. But I'll give you a little cheat sheet for today. He is the owner and founder of AFT Construction, which is an award-winning construction firm located in Arizona, and his firm has had projects featured in magazines such as Fine Home Building, Luxe Interiors and Design, and Professional Builder. Brad is also a public speaker and an ambassador for many national brands, including Kohler, Pella, Cambria, Elkay, Sub-Zero Wolf, and Post-it Notes, okay? He also has a podcast, and this is what you really want to make sure you hear, the AFT Construction podcast, where he talks every single week with other builders and industry people about what it's like from the build side. And you know, anytime you understand what somebody goes through on their end of the business, then you get tons of insights on how you can bring value to a builder. And also you learn, I'm just saying, the ways to make your wily way right into their world, which is exactly what we all want to do, right? So before we start our conversation today, I want to remind you about Monogram Appliances, our sponsor, and have a big thank you to them, okay? Monogram Appliances wants to partner with you and support you on your next build project. When your client wants only the finest in luxury appliances for their kitchen, Monogram is where you want to take them to look. Luxury, high-tech, unmatched customer experience. Please go sign up for your design trade account today by going to monogram.com/LuAnn. That's monogram.com/LuAnn. All righty. So today, Brad, you and I are going to talk about that all-elusive design build book that designers should be, if they're smart, trying to figure out a way to deliver to their builders so that they just make themselves the most amazing, valuable asset that they possibly can, both to their client and to their builder, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny you bring that up because we as builders, I mean, especially on some of the projects we're working on, that is what we live by. I mean, it's almost as if the design book takes precedence or the architectural drawing. So, of course, you know, that's one of the most important parts of our business.
What I know is, like, with Window Works, many years I've been on construction sites where the designer is talking, the builder's there. Usually the architect is gone by the time window treatments are being brought in, right? But the thing is, one thing that I've noticed is even the most efficient designer often will not tie the loop back with details. So we have I'm thinking of an exact conversation I can remember. This happened years ago, and I bring my partner in and our lead installer in to a project. The walls are open. The GC is there, the designer is there, and we are talking about where the electrical boxes have to go in order for the window treatments to be motorized. And of course, to the designer's aesthetic, all of things are behind walls. We don't want to see ugly wires and plugs and all that stuff. And the electrician was there. And as I often lament on the show, Brad, there's always many, many people in the room, and usually only one of us has a pen and paper taking notes. And that has changed a little bit as I've been complaining about that. I've noticed the designers in New York, New Jersey. But I have a very clear conversation with my team, with the electrician, the GC, and the designer. We make very clear decisions on where the outlets are going to go, what's going to happen. I write it all down. I follow it up in an email. 6 months later, our installers are on the job, and the electrical boxes are not where they were supposed to be. They're right. And you know what? Yep. I'm going to tell you what. And that electrician stood there and said, "That's not what we said. That's not what we decided." And I'm like, what? Here it is in writing. But you see, that's where I say that and $5 gets me a latte. Being right in that position doesn't help me one bit, because the walls are closed, the sheetrock is done, the wallpaper is done, and it's time for drapes. But that's a mistake that could be avoided, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what you're speaking to is just the overall, I would say, complexity or challenge we all deal with, right? I'm sure any designers listening has hundreds of experiences that they're not in their head, as you mentioned that. And the frustration with either the builder or architect or the subcontractors that didn't follow that. And it's funny because you made a comment. You said, here I am with, 4 different companies and only one's taking notes. And not to tout anyone's horn, but I've learned through experience. It's funny, that's cause for termination, right? If we don't have our superintendent with his iPad and documenting this and putting in our software, they'll get written up. But I mean, I know we don't want to go down that track of the management side, but what I'd say is that's really important is understanding, okay, what you're doing, LuAnn, you're going to go back, you're going to send clear direction and write up. And really that's the essence of this conversation is, as a designer, how can they be a resource for the builder? Okay, well, the more information we could put down, whether it be how we're going to do a reverse soffit so we can hide the drapery up there behind and motorize it and hide the electrical, the more that we're putting on paper, well, now the builder's accountable, right? And there's no confusion, no accusation. It's going to be simple to say it was clearly documented. It was labeled. Here's our elevation. Here's our layout. Here's our measurement. Go execute. And now we need the builder to be competent, right? And so, but the more that you provide, the more it's going to help us to be successful from our side.
Yeah, and the thing is, so what we want to talk about is this design build book today, right? And a truly, truly high level, you use the word to me off air, A+ tier level interior design firm. They're not deciding that with the electrician and the window treatment people at the point that the electrician is going to start working the next day. They're deciding that weeks before, and they're providing that to you in a very detailed format in the design build book with all of the other things. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a phone call, the electrician says, "Hey, what you outlined I can't do because this pipe ended up being here, and now there's a reason for a revision," right? But this project that I was on did not have an executed design build book. It was, okay, now it's time for everybody to talk about this. All right, let's all get in and talk about it. And that's okay. It's not horrible. But when we talk about, we've got designers, Brad, that we know that are saying to themselves, our firm is going to be A+ tier. We're going to deliver more than what's expected. And that comes from having all of this well before you start putting not sheetrock, but sticks up and electrical in. Am I right?
You are spot on. I don't think you could have said any better, LuAnn. So well, you teed that up perfectly, So what I would say is, as we're going through this, now there are tiers, and we can get to each of the tiers because it's important to understand that, in a realistic world, you're going to have designers that are at different skill sets and levels and experience and knowledge and capabilities with CAD or chief architect, that's fine. And in addition to that, you're going to have clients that are at different levels as far as budget, right? Not everyone can pay a $15 a square foot for interior design, so it's going to vary there. And we get that, but let's just talk where you kind of kick this off on the A+ level. So if you're looking at that, your example of being in the field with the electrician, correct, that should have all been done at the beginning. So let's talk about that process. I mean, for designers that want to get at that high level, that want to be executing at the top of their game with the top architects, top builders, okay, there has to be, whether it's the principal or someone in the firm that really understands CAD and detail. So all of us have seen architectural drawings, right? Whether you're a builder, designer, no matter what, or such as doing window coverings,
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that an architect, they're going to have floor plans, and they're going to have elevations, and then they're going to have interior sections where they're kind of cutting like a butter knife cutting through the house, right? So you can kind of see looking through these hallways. And then they'll have the detail sheets. And this is really important. As you go to the back of the plan set, you'll have structural details, and it really shows you, okay, on the footing of a house, here's the exact depth of the footing and the width and the height, and here's how we're going to do the attachment, and here's the anchor bolt that's going to connect to the framing and secure the foundation to the house. And so all these little things. Well, now let's incorporate that to interior design. What I've recognized is these top tier designers, they're not just giving me a picture book, if you will, of inspiration, or they're not just giving me a wood flooring spec or a cabinet door spec. They're actually going through and giving me sheets of documentation similar to that architect with details. And what this is showing is exactly what we're alluding to, right? It's showing me cut sheets in the sense that I know exactly termination points of wall trim. If it's a molding, I know the exact width and height and depth of that molding. And not only do I know that based on the structural detail, or the architectural detail, we'll call it, but they also have a spec book referencing, here's where you purchased that, or here's the exact spec, that your supplier can match. And so it's really that hand in hand that goes through every little nuance of the entire project from front to back.
That is a level of detail that we are going to call that A+ design firm, right? Because I'm hearing what you're saying. And I'm also, thankfully, I hear what you're saying too, Brad, that there are different levels of capability at different points of your career. And no matter what level of capability you have, you always have the ability to be organized, right? So when we talk about at the entry level, being organized might be, to your point, hi, I'm the designer. I'm going to give the builder my design build book, and it's going to show a picture of the kind of molding we want in the family room and the kind of molding that we want in all of the doors throughout the house, XYZ. But when we go all the way to the A+ tier, what you're saying to us is, if you want to swim in that lane, then it's not simply a picture of the molding. It is actually the little legitimate specifications of run the molding 1.2 feet, turn a corner one, like you're literally giving it on a technical drawing. Is that what you're saying?
100%, because really what it comes down to is, okay, there's going to be some time vested by the designer in that process, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. We get it. As you're going through doing the CAD detailing of the molding, the thickness, the depth, the exact termination, if it's a stacked crown, here are the 8 pieces to that stacked crown, and this is how we want it to look, and here's the cross section, here's the side elevation. So, well, a couple things will happen. One, there's no confusion, right? It's going to be completely laid out. So now it falls on me as the builder to execute. Number two, it creates some accurate pricing. There's no guess game. We know exactly what the price is. We can go do it. And also it saves time for the designer. I'm not having to call them and say, hey, how do I do this crown detail? What are you looking at? I know you gave me this Pinterest picture, but how do you expect this to be done in this condition? I mean, that's already been thought out and planned with the architect in the front end, and it goes hand in hand with your example. I mean, if we already know the furniture layout and we know all of exactly where everything's going to go, then now we can spacefully plan where these windows need to be. So the windows are centered in the room. And depending on the elevation, maybe we have 2 windows that we want to make at equal distance from the wall. And then we're going to put our electrical here, and we're going to hide our motorized shades here. And so all of that thought and detail really takes that that designer to that A+ level.
So again, like just visualizing that, I can see we can give a picture from Pinterest that shows the 8 stacked molding or whatever you said, right? But that's a completely different thing than being in the condition in the room and saying, okay, awesome picture, Mr. or Mrs. Designer, but we've got this little alcove cut back here and we've got this slant on the ceiling here. So how exactly? And I've been there. I've been there measuring window treatments where the GC or the builder says to the designer, can I grab you for 5 minutes? And there they are, knee deep in how is this going to go? And they're deciding in real time. And what you're saying is that's not horrible. I'm going to sit here and qualify it again, right? It's not horrible if it's above your pay grade as a designer, your skill set or whatever. At least you're there on the job and showing up so you're available for questions. But aspiring to A+, you're saying that they have taken the time to actually they know exactly the conditions. And I hear what you said, that they must be skilled in this in doing CAD or chief architect, because if you're not going to be able to create this level of detail. And so you have to be able to, maybe you're not the one in your firm that does it, but you have to be able to read it and understand it so that you can I don't even know. Do you need to be able to read it and understand it in order to have someone in your firm create that level of detail, Brad? Or is it That's
a great question.
Okay.
Yeah. So LuAnn, I mean, really, there's a couple things, and I know we're on a podcast, so I can't show this. And I'm looking at 2 design books, as we're speaking here. And what happens is, on one side, and we'll call this more of a mid-level, not entry level, because it's more mid-level because there are CAD, but it's very simplistic. And they're showing it's a bathroom. So they're showing, okay, here's the vanity, here's the measurement off the ground. It's a floating vanity. Here's the shower wall tile. Here's the width of the tile installed on that shower wall, and here's the shower head height. Very basic, very conceptual. It's still enough for me to really execute at the level we need to. But then let's take it to the A+ side. So now I'm looking at something that's in 2-dimensional. I'm looking at this, but it's so detailed. The cabinet doors are drawn in there, the exact tile, the grout lines, the shower head specifics, the mirror, the backsplash. And so what happens is, and it also has given me, I'm going to call it a 4D. And by 4D, I just mean a 4-sided elevation. So they're giving me a view of all 4 sides of that bathroom as if you're standing looking at each wall. So what ends up happening is, if I'm looking at the A+ one, I can see this visually as if it was built. I mean, there's no color to it, but I can't miss. There's no way this is going to miss. The client can see it even if they're not visual people, because you're looking at this and it's very detailed. And going back to your question, this is where that handoff is there, because if you were the principal of your designer, and let's say that, you just have an eye for design. I mean, the reality is with design, there is a lot of, there's a technical part of design, right? And really understanding how things tie in and look right. But there's also an eye, right? There's an eye of being able to put different colors in there and textures and patterns and make it mix and make it pop. And some people are just naturally talented and maybe didn't have the schooling, and that's okay. As you hire someone out of school that's learned CAD, you can direct them in CAD. They can draw it, and immediately, even a person that doesn't do CAD, I don't do CAD. I did some in college 15 years ago, but now, I can look at it and still direct someone and have a good eye for it. So yes, it is something that they could direct had they have someone in their office that does CAD.
Okay, so that's good to know, because it's like we always say, you can hire out what you don't know how to do, but I didn't know if you could oversee it, since I don't have the skill set or understanding of it at all. So that's awesome. And so when we talk about your mid-level presentation of a bathroom and the A+ level presentation of a bathroom, I understood very clearly, for the A+ presentation of a bathroom from a designer to a builder, it is every single detail. It is every type of faucet, a picture of the faucet, it's the height of the shower head, it's everything, and it's all 4 walls enunciated so I can see everything. What are some of the things? I wasn't getting so much the difference in a mid-level. Is a mid-level just saying, this is the vanity, but it's not showing it on the wall? This is the shower head, but not calling out the height? Like, what are some of those more tangible differences?
That's a great question, and we'll go mid-level to like an entry level, if you will. But I would say the mid-level would be they don't have all four sides, right? All four walls elevated. They really aren't asking the questions. So let's talk about the shower. There's different ways to install, and this is the technical side. So if you're doing like a mud set shower, what that means is that we're building a custom shower pan and waterproofing it. So from an install level, it's a lot more expensive because the waterproofing. So essentially, you're building a thickened wall and floor that is at least a couple inches to maybe 4 or 5 inches thick, right? And you're doing that to create a good barrier so you don't have leaks in the future. Well, here's how that impacts design. An A++ designer says, okay, if you're building out the shower wall now for my mud pan, if you're mud setting all the tile, I'm going to have a return here. So what am I going to miter these two pieces of tile? Am I going to get a metal Schluter detail on the end? Am I going to do some kind of end cap with the tile? So they're already thinking through that with the tile company. Whereas, if they're doing it just as a pre-built mud pan and you're setting it on the wall, you won't need that detail, right? Because you can figure out that finished edge. But going back to your question on the entry level or mid-level, so the mid-level is just a lot more basic, right? They haven't really, I'm looking at it right now to give you an example. So it's a floating vanity, and what you have a rectangle on the bottom that's going to be open foot space, right, where you're standing underneath the cabinet, and it's saying 12 inches off the floor. And then they're showing a 12-inch piece of cabinet, and then they're showing a 12-inch waterfall edge, right? So you almost, if you're looking at this, you just think about you have 3 lines going up, 12, 12, and 12. That's it. But on the A++, they're actually showing on that bottom 12 inches, well, here's the baseboard that's going back there. Here's the detail of the cabinetry. So I can see a clear definition of that cabinet face as opposed to the bottom foot space. And then the 12-inch waterfall, instead of just a blank waterfall, they actually have like a little quartz marbling going through. So you can clearly see, oh, that's quartz, or marble. Here's the cabinet face, and then here's that open foot stave down below. So I can look at that visually and immediately tell what the designer's trying to convey, whereas the mid-level is more just giving me spacing. It still allows me to achieve the end goal. I just may have some questions for the designer to make sure that I'm not missing something.
That's very clear. I understand that, because it's what it is and the reason that I wanted to get in the weeds on this particular conversation, Brad, is because even delivering the mid-level design book takes a great amount of discipline and attention to detail to put together in the context of a busy design firm. Because, of course, a firm that is probably typically delivering a mid-level design build book is probably not a firm with 14 junior designers. You know what I'm saying? Right? So they're one day in the field, one day at their CAD drawings, one day, having a, powwow with an employee, another day, at a cocktail event trying to draw up a pipeline. Like, they're wearing a lot of hats, right? And so when they put together, and I can see that is infinitely better than just having vanities delivered and saying, where does a floating vanity go? Just a side builder, dude, right? And so that middle level is a certain level of accomplishment is what I want to say, to put that together. But that's so clear. What it is to me is the middle level is when you describe the baseboard, that makes perfect sense, because the mid-level designer is going to say, it might even say, put vanity at 42 inches off ground and leave 12 inches space floating. But for you, when I think about you literally building that house, it's like, okay, and what happens down there? Am I coming up with a riser of tile? Am I coming up with a riser of baseboard? And if it is baseboard, what baseboard? And if it is tile, what tile? Is the wall tiled? Is it not tiled? Like, all of a sudden, the gaps are so clear when you think about you actually executing it, right?
Absolutely, because and let's go back to some of the examples you're bringing up, is that even a mid-level designer, it is a lot of talent and work to execute at that level. because anyone knows that does CAD drawings with their design, there is so much time into that program and the commands of CAD. But what I'll say is that when you're taking it to the next level, what happens is, you're not having to specify the brand of touch latch, but you are putting in general notes on your drawing that even though you've given us 4-sided elevations, and then we also have a top version looking straight down so we can see the depth and flooring transitions, whether it be diagonal or straight layer, whatever we're doing with the floor and how that transitions to the doorway, all that's there, but they have general notes saying, hey, Brad, look, this is a modern bathroom. We're not going to have cabinet hardware. We're going to have touch latch, but in this bathroom, we're going to do hardware, and we want the hardware to be, an 8-inch pull, and we want it set at the upper third. Here's the exact dimension on that cabinet door, on this flat inset cabinet. And so there's just so much more detail where I'm looking at that, or my cabinet company or my installer, and there's no questions. We know exactly what it is to do, exactly what to price, and it's so well done, just like a good architect, that honestly there wouldn't have to be any site visits or phone calls, with the exception of, hey, LuAnn, your design's being installed. We just put in the cabinetry. Come check it out,
Right.
So that you can come see that.
Yeah, and that's another perfectly logical place you could see the mid-level or the entry-level design book says, here's the hardware for the vanity cabinets, but the A-level says, and install them 2 inches from the top, or 2, you know what I mean? Like that's,
right.
Like you're sitting there looking at the cabinet door and say, okay, where do we, and again, I'm empathizing because I've watched designers be pulled away from meeting a different trade over to a guy who's saying, where am I putting the cabinet knobs? And then the designer sitting there saying, oh, well, hold it there. Let me decide. Let me hold a little lower. Okay, right there, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny because, going through this from the builder side, we're realistic too. Like, we understand there are price points and other things at play, but the more that the designer's pushing, and you only know what you know, right? So I think for any designer listening, if we've triggered something where they're like, wait, maybe there's some more detail. I mean, they could reach out to me. I'm happy to help or give them some ideas. I could give them a simple cut sheet to see the difference there. But in addition to that, I think it's really important for designers, just on a bigger level, through social media and relationships and events, and through everything you're doing, LuAnn, for the industry, reach out to other designers that are non-compete in other parts of the country and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing this detail? What does this look like? And, that's something that from my side I've done as a builder, to start networking with other builders. Okay, what am I missing here? How can I make this process better from our side? And so that's really important, because you only know what you know. And so the more that we're hopefully triggering this, these designers can reach out and say, how can I up my game a little?
Right. And, it just occurred to me, the risk here when you don't create an A+ level design book is more than time and money wasted. It's also, you risk that the builder makes these decisions without you. Right?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not waiting for you to come and say what to put underneath that 12 inches of space. I'm putting this molding there, right?
Yeah, and what's funny that you bring that up is I'm sure every designer's not on their head again, because all the time the builder is doing stuff in the field and the designer shows up and says, hold on, what just happened? Like, it was never supposed to look like this. Like, this was not the interpretation. And so really you're keeping the guessing game out of it. You're leaving the interpretation out of it. It's very simple. It's very simplistic. It's very detailed to, hey, anyone should follow this. And if they didn't, you need to go back and fix that, right? Mm-hmm. Even as, like you said, LuAnn, you're going to come lay them out at the front end. Well, we're bringing this even more front. So for you as the supplier, you're going to say, hey, this is all drawn out and spec'd. I'm good to go. Here's what we need. We can have it all detailed. We'll come field measure to make sure it's right. There we go. The information's there. And so the more we can provide, the less will allow the builder to go off on some tangent and do their own thing.
Exactly. Well, I have to say, this is one of those, one of my favorite sayings. I don't know who the heck made it up, but I love it. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's simple. right? Or just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. That's what it is. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. It's so simple to see and hear what the difference is between an entry level, a mid-level, and an A+ level design build book that you deliver, but it is not easy to do. And I guess there's probably, as you mentioned, a learning curve because you don't know what you don't know. And so now maybe you've been taught a few things about the details in a bathroom that you might not have even thought to pay attention to, or that you thought you had to be the one to pay attention to. But in collaboration, and to your exact point, in reaching out and asking, how are things executed? How do you do things? It's an interesting thing. I've been working with a designer, Jenny Slingerland, and we are working on developing a course. I don't know if you know this, Brad, but I have been introducing over the last year live teaching courses on different topics within the design back end of their business to up the game. And one of the courses that we've been working on is this design build book process, and making it so that a designer can learn how to do this with a high level of execution. And so interesting. Now, let me ask you something about if a designer is listening and they don't have the resources or the knowledge yet or the capacity to deliver an A+ book. Is this, well, then don't bother, sweetie, don't even bother? Or no, a mid-level and an entry-level book, I'll take it all day over nothing. So how should we think about that type of criteria, Brad?
No, that's a great question. And I think that everyone should be searching how to increase their Rolodex, we'll use that word, but their resume and opportunity, and search for that lost leader. And there's a lot of benefit to a designer coming in that, say, is at a mid-level that's still providing great information. I mean, heck, all our projects, not all of my projects are A++. Let's just be realistic. We have budgets, our clients. I want to work with good people. So to me, I don't care if their budget's $100 a square foot or $600 a square foot. I just want to work for good people. It's a tough industry, right? And I want to work with a good team that's collaborative. So I think designers, there's a lot of pain points that I have that they can, solve for me and bring a lot of value. And so I don't think they should ever get discouraged. The reality is, they're going to continue to grow and learn. And maybe it's at a point that, hey, maybe they're only one person in their design firm or two or three, and they're just not there. That's okay. Chase those upper level projects. You may spend a little bit more time, answer some questions. If there's some gaps you have to fill into scope and design, that's okay. You're going to get to the point where maybe now you have the revenue or capacity or network where you can now maybe hire someone that's skilled and then start networking with other designers and just keep building off of that. We all have to start somewhere. I did with my business. And so it takes time, but chase it. Don't be discouraged. Go chase it, because even that mid-level design from a designer can help us execute, a multi $3, $4, $5 million home.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we're not actually, just to be clear, we're not talking about that their design talent is mid-level. We're talking about the work product that they turn over to the builder. Correct. Is mid-level. Right. They could be the most talented designer ever, but not have the capacity or knowledge yet to create an A+ tier design book. And I like that it's helpful because, look, even a mid-level design book, to go back to my first example, I think you could expect to include where you want the outlets to be for window treatment motorization. That's not rocket science. That's not a detail that, if you're thinking about motorization, it's like, okay, put it up by where the headrail is. It's not that crazy hard to guess. Okay. So to that point, that could have been avoided. But the thing is, maybe it's not that A+ level, but there's a lot that can be a value to the builder that moves the project along, that enables the builder to execute X amount of details before he or she has to call up the designer and say, we're going to need eyeballs on this together because I'm not understanding how you want this molding to be, articulated through these curves and this thing or the whatever, right?
Yeah. And what's funny you bring that up, just a couple things I was thinking about is when you talked about just that designer who it's not a skill set from their talent and vision to do beautiful design, because I've done 2 projects that have been nationally published by a designer that did zero CAD. And I will tell you, it was so painful for me as a builder because they didn't have the expertise, and it was just a lot more time involved. However, with that said, these are A++ homes when they're finished and beautiful, nationally published. It got a ton of national recognition. And so, yes, some of these designers are incredibly talented. Now it's putting everything together. And it's funny because you start to see that any designer listening, they're going to have, everyone has some protocol. When they sit down, they interview the client, they may have a questionnaire that they give the client. And some of them go a step further. Like some of them, I've worked with the designers that will tell the clients, hey, when I come visit you, make sure your house is a mess. Don't clean it for 2 weeks. And the reason being, I want to come in and I want to see, how you're living, and then I can factor that in. What's the side? I'm looking at a detail now from this A++ designer. And they did that, and they went in the bathroom and saw, okay, well, what kind of products are he and she using in the shower, and where are they setting them? And so they're building this custom shower niche that fits all of their product, and they give me a front elevation and they give me a side cut elevation. So I know the depth and the termination, and that kind of goes into our conversation that there's just so much detail at that level. But go chase the big stuff. Get in there, start figuring out how to work through those details, and it will all come together.
I love it. And the thing is, too, we're talking about this as far as the benefit to the designer in attracting builders, and builders who are like, yes, I want to work with you. And therefore, like we talked in our last show, when a builder works with a designer that comes to the project well organized, then that builder, when they have an opportunity to recommend a designer, they're going to pick the ones that are organized. And I'm going to just say, like what I always say, we expect you all can put together a pretty room, but I want to work with somebody who comes to the project and the process organized, right, Brad?
Oh my gosh, it is so true, because again, and you said this before that, there's levels of expertise. That's fine. We can deal with that and we can make it work. But when you look at bringing in a designer to the project, it is so important. How quick are they getting back to me? Are they answering? Is it, a collaboration? Do we get along well? Is that cohesiveness there? Are they organized, which is so key, where if I have a question, they know the answer, at least have enough information to give me a response there. So that's the biggest thing, is that as you start to fill those pain points and you build that relationship, more often than not, we know that it's a relationship industry, and that value they bring from just being organized makes all the difference for me.
Right. And because that's the thing. People want to continue to do business with people who make all of the project better. And we trust that any one of you, for the most part, is going to deliver a beautiful project. But what's the process, right? So that's awesome. And where I was going to go and take that further is so we want to do this. We want to aspire to putting a book together, whether it's entry level, mid-level, or A+ level. This is what I would love for each designer, if they're going to do a reno project or a full build, to aspire to do this process. And each time you do it better than before. And the thing about it is the benefit is in this relationship with the builder. The builder looks at you as a professional. The builder looks at you as somebody that's reliable. And to your point, I hear you, Brad. You even appreciate it if it's entry or mid-level. It says something about the firm, right? It does, doesn't it?
Well, I think so. Like I know we talked about this on our first time together, but there's so much value in design, and it's just as important for myself as the builder to help convey that to the customer. And it's really easy to sit here and say, look, here's some pictures from our early career without a designer, and here's some with designers. I mean, the contrast is striking. And then when I can sit there, and what's really important for the designer to understand, we're not just trying to get them from entry or mid-level up. They should be compensated for that. And and that's where it's my position too, to say, hey, when the designer or the customer comes to me and says, hey, Brad, why is this designer so expensive as opposed to this one? Oh, let me show you. Here's their design book. Here's theirs.
Yes.
Even you that don't know anything about building, you could quickly look through this at the level of detail and say, I get it. And then I can explain to them, well, here's your savings. They're resourcing, they're picking, they're measuring, they're templating, and they're documenting everything. And it just makes it so much easier. So I couldn't agree more. I just think there's so much value in design, and I do see more and more builders understanding that, which is great for all of us, right?
Well, and I love that you brought that around, because I was tried twice to bring it to that and kept getting waylaid by myself on my own accord there. And I never would have said it as clearly as you did, because where I was going is, there is the value from the designer giving value to the builder, but I did want to make that point that the value is to the client also. And when the client is saying, why will it take this many hours? And the designer is thinking to themselves, well, should I eliminate doing all these CAD drawings because the client is pushing me back? And you enunciated it perfectly the way we want to explain it to the client, why it's so valuable. It's like, this is the type of work and detail that I'm going to deliver to your builder, and that is going to save you time and money with your builder. And the thing is, you can pay me or pay him, but when you do pay the designer, the whole job sings better, right? I mean, that's
could pay the bank. Yeah, right. Or you could pay the bank with carried interest as the project takes longer, right? And we all know that every time my construction project is taking 2 to 3 months longer than I was promised. And so that money has to be allocated somewhere. Why not put it into design in those right hands that can now optimize that, and everyone can work, at that executed level.
Right, because the value is exponential there. You're not just, the money that you're saving and you're investing in a design is not only putting the project together in a more timely way, a more organized way, but it is truly going to elevate that actual end product, which is what the designer loves so much, which is the beauty of it, because it has been thoughtfully considered, as opposed to, well, nobody told them how to do the molding, so we just did that. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I walk into a room and the designer is surprised when, whatever it is, you've got walls that come across and all of a sudden there's an arch window, and where does the molding stop and start? And when the designer looking at the builder going, why did you do it that way? And it takes him everything he can not to say, well, you didn't tell me what to do with it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, and I know we don't have time for this Power Talk Friday, but I think in leading up to the next one, when you start thinking about, as we're kind of alluding to, cost and in any project with VE, value engineering, and budgets, how can the designer actually be a resource and the builder be a resource to the designer, vice versa, for, the specs and finishes? Well, that's all super important, because again, the more detail we have, the easier it is to VE or make changes or adds or deletions. And it becomes very transparent and less confusing, which saves me time as a builder. I can tell you, just at estimating, when a customer comes back and if we're over budget on something and we're having to go back, it takes so much time if there's not good details from the designer to now make sure that I'm giving the right credits and not missing something and pricing myself out of something. So, that alludes into so many other parts of this whole, the whole cycle of the build process.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I'm so excited that our paths cross, and I thank Jenny Slingerland again for introducing us. And, this whole thing, the design build book, I love it. I think it is a great thing for each designer to aspire to really learn how to do. And as I said a few moments ago, do it at the best you can and constantly get better at it, just like you're doing in every part of your business, right, Brad?
Absolutely. Just do it the best you can. And again, you'll evolve, and you'll make builders happy, and you'll start getting work published, and we'll all be happy.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Brad.
Thanks, LuAnn.
There you have it. Another insightful conversation with Brad. How fantastic is this, really? Isn't it just like being a fly on the wall to an exclusive builders hangout club? I mean, right? Being able to hear how you bring value to a builder, how to express that both to builders and to clients alike in the words that they understand and that motivate them and that helps them to really, truly see exactly how you positively impact the project. I mean, it's like the credit card commercial, right? Priceless. So, and I have to just say, please do definitely listen to Brad's podcast, AFT Construction, because that is truly hanging out with the builders and learning all about the pain points that they have and the things that they do to solve them, and how much better will that make you in the relationship with them. I'm going to point out a few observations after I thank J-Pour Living for sponsoring the show today. We talk a ton about business models on the show. And did you realize that J-Pour Living's business model is a vertical business model? And do you know why that's good for you? Well, J-Pour Living's vertical business model means that the company remains in control of the entire manufacturing process, from fiber selection to rug weaving to finishing. This means that they are able to ensure quality, consistency, and social responsibility along every step of the process. Sort of like the advantages that you talk about with clients, right? When you are involved in the design build from beginning to end, the end result is always better. It's the same with the beautiful hand-woven rugs from J-Pour Living, overseeing every step so that the end product is something you are proud to include in your interior design projects. Sign up for your trade account today at jpourliving.com/LuAnn. That's JAIPURLIVING.com/LuAnn. Okie doke. Now, highlights of this conversation for me. Number one, the importance of a design book. No matter what level you are in business, and to Brad's point, any information beats no information. He said the builder is in the field working, and if you haven't supplied information, this doesn't necessarily mean he will stop to ask you. He may just simply decide for you. And that's like the worst case scenario. But in the middle ground, it's like he said, he's got to stop. He's going to stop. Brad is going to stop and ask you. But we've all been on projects where the builder didn't stop and ask you. Okay. So putting something together, and no matter what that is, and as your expertise grows, so will the level of detail you deliver in your design book. And again, we're talking about your expertise in putting together a design book, not your expertise in putting together the pretty, all right? Now, the second thing is providing a builder with an example of your design book enables him to sell you and your value to his client when he's with them alone, right? This will ultimately make it easier for you to close more projects with less negotiating, I may add, okay? When he's on board and he's singing your praises, and I should be saying she because we have she builders as well, right? But when the builder is on board and singing your praises, you're in a much stronger position when you ultimately present your proposal. And then the third thing is take Brad's advice and chase the next level project, right? You do this by perfecting your process where you're at and continuing to refine it every single time you do a project. You've heard me say it dozens of times on the show to do the autopsy of every project. I want you to analyze your profit and loss. I want you to analyze your margins. I want you to go over the mistakes and the gaps carefully, always figuring out how you could have created a better outcome or how a problem could have been avoided, right? So example, the backsplash tile was installed in the wrong direction, and your design book simply had the tile product specification but no drawing. Regardless of how that outcome came, whether you had to eat it or the tile guy had to eat it or the client said no worries, the point is if something like that happens to you, then absolutely take review. And next time you'll include the tile drawing in the detail. And then what happens is with each project, if you commit to refining your details, you will create a design book that will ultimately attract clients and high-end clients and high-end builders. And lastly, I know I've been mentioning it since last winter, but we will finally be launching Design Build for Profit. It's coming either late summer or early fall, okay, is looking like the timing. And for now, though, if you want to be notified when the course opens, get on the email list by going to designbuildforprofit.com. designbuildforprofit.com. This way, if it's something you're interested in, you don't have to worry about missing an announcement on the show. This email will go out to you saying, hey, you said you were interested. Now the registration is open. And speaking of registrations, registration is open right now for Buy Wholesale for Profit. Okay, Tracy Connell is going to be for 6 weeks helping you and explaining to you the tiers of the wholesale furniture market, how to qualify for each tier, what the criteria are, who the players are, who the brands are, how to open the accounts, how to calculate margins, and how to make money selling furniture. All right. Now, if you have been for years buying wholesale furniture and you've got this down pat, then this is not for you. This is for you if you are unclear on this, if you are saying to yourself, not sure, and you want that confidence of having a seasoned interior designer explain it to you in an environment where no one is going to look at you and say, how did you not know that? Right? It's a lot to know. I've talked to some newer interior designers, 2-3 years, that really understand it. And one recently said, I said to her, how do you know all that? And she said, oh, well, I worked 5 years in a furniture showroom before I opened up my own firm. Well, see, that's what I call a leg up. So if you didn't happen to work 5 years in a furniture showroom before you opened your firm, this course might be for you. And if you're listening today, Friday, July 3rd in real time, today is the last day for the early bird pricing. So go to buywholesaleforprofit.com. Buywholesaleforprofit.com. The course is going to start on July 22nd, 2020. Next week, I will have Rashida Gray with me for our next installment of Black Lives Matter. I have to say, with every conversation I'm having, I'm learning so much, and I hope you are tuning in and learning as well. It is really the only way that we can support our Black interior designer friends, and the only way that we can be a part of the change that our industry needs. And my great hope is that that change that we create in our industry will spill over into the world. Okay? So please show up, pay attention, come with an open mind and an open heart. All right? Thank you so much for showing up today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be. All of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.